This is what I need you to look at.
Operation Green Basket, Operation Solution, Rapid Push Coalition, 55 members of the all the front line, fighting for justice, freedom, and equity all over the world. I want you to put your hands together for his only founder president of the Rapid Push Coalition, Colonel Jesse Lewis Jackson. Come on, Chicago, show some love.
members in Chicago who reached out in the first place. Without any preparation, and the migrants come across the border from Mexico, Venezuela, came across the Mississippi River, and came from Kentucky to the island regions. And unlike killing through 5,000 lynchings after the Emancipation Proclamation, 12 years we were free in some sense. we have need to focus on service. Now the slums are gone, basically. But guess what? People are living on the conditions that are not holy, not right. We must fight that. I urge you who are watching, part of our weekly forum, Rainbow Bush Coalition Forum. Again, I want to urge you to join the organization today, which Bishop will tell you more about in just a little while. I want you to stand up and fight back, because dignity should be non-negotiable. Say dignity, non-negotiable. Dignity, non-negotiable. Our share development. Many of these vacant lots. What happened to the lots? We stayed on the safe street. Now can we still stay on the safe street in private houses? Say, I am somebody. I am somebody. I am somebody. Respect me. Protect me. Never neglect me. I am somebody. I am God's child. I'm God's child. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive. Now you're really the panelists today. Thank you.
Give it up. Come on, everybody, make some noise for Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. No, you can do a little bit better than that. Make some noise for Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. Mrs. Jacqueline Jackson is in the building. Let's give it up for the Queen of Social Justice and Civil Rights. Make some noise! We're getting ready to start. Before we get ready to start, we want everybody to please take this moment to silence your phones. Silence your phones. We have a number of photographers and videographers and people who are doing professional photographs. And so we're going to ask during the forum if you allow them to do their job. And at the close of this forum, we'll open it back up to the public. But please silence. That means put your phone on vibrate or put it on airplane mode. All right? All right, we're ready to get started. Clap your hands, everybody. One more time, Chicago, make some noise. I want you to help me thank our sponsors, SEIU, Jackie Algie. Give a clap for them. Souls to the Poles, Coco, Shannon Bennett, and G2 Brown. Project Hood and this amazing church, New Beginnings Church of Chicago. Pastor Corey Brooks, make some noise for him. Their chief operating officer, Renda Troutman, is going to come. Let's give her a round for her. She comes and give a welcome on behalf of Pastor Brooks.
Thank you, Bishop Grant. Let me correct one thing. I am not the chief operating officer. My name is Renda Troutman, and I am the director of government and community affairs here at Project Hood. All right. I just want to welcome everybody here to New Beginnings Church for Project Hood's first mayoral debate. All right. Sponsored, the bishop has already stole my thunder, but sponsored by Rainbow Push Coalition and Souls to the Pole, SEIU, and the Kenwood Oakland Community Organization. We are happy to collaborate with these esteemed organizations to bring the mayoral candidates to you, the community. Just wanted to say that Pastor Corey Brooks, who is also the CEO of Project Hood, known as the Rooftop Pastor, and is fearless in his efforts to improve the quality of life for our community. He wants to thank you all for coming out today, taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us for this wonderful occasion. Thank you very much.
Well, I want to acknowledge our moderators for this forum. She has already introduced herself, an amazing voice and figure in Chicago media, Santila Jackson of the Santila Jackson Show, WCPT 820 AM, the nation's most progressive talk show, and of course, Keep Hope Alive Radio with Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson every Sunday morning in 25 cities all over the country, and Ms. Tia Ewing from Fox 32 Chicago. Let's make some noise for all of them. Now, before we turn it over to our moderators, we have some rules of engagement, and we know that since we're in a church, we're going to do this the right way. There will be a 1-minute opening, 45 seconds to answer, and a 1-minute close at the end by all of the candidates, and there are no interruptions. And so without further ado, I want to turn this over to our moderators. Let's get started with the People's Agenda. Clap your hands.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning. Santita Jackson here, and the beautiful Tia Ewing.
Yes, I'm so good to be here. I've been following every last debate in forum, so this is going to be good.
And when can we see you on Fox 32?
You can see me on Fox 32 at 4 p.m., 5 p.m., and 9 p.m. Monday through Friday.
And let everybody at Fox know that we want more of Tia Ewing. Come on, everybody, give it
Okay,
up.
thank you.
We're so grateful to all of you for coming out on Saturday. You know, the democracy itself, the republic itself would not exist without your engagement. This is not tiddlywinks. Politics in America only works, and America only works when you get involved. Change only works when you get involved. Reverend Jackson reminds us that this is, at its birth, a right-wing nation. But every progressive movement has come from the people. It comes from you. So as we ask these candidates questions about the kind of Chicago that we want them to make, remember, that change has to come not from their house, but your house. Amen? All right. So we want to once again thank the New Beginnings Church, Alderman Orinda Troutman. We thank you for your many years of public service. Give it up for Alderman Troutman. And of course, that rooftop pastor, Corey Brooks. Reverend Corey Brooks. Give it up for Corey Brooks. And thank you to this beautiful, beautiful New Beginnings family. Thank you so much. We're so excited to be here. Indeed, the Bible tells you to love your neighbor as yourself. And probably one of the greatest expressions of that is public service. When you decide to give yourself, Ms.
You're right,
Ewing,
absolutely.
over to the service of others. And so we want to thank all of these people. Who do we have participating with us today?
We have Representative Cambium Buckner. I call him Cambium. He always says it's like I'm putting him in trouble, but Cam. We have Congressman Chuy Garcia, Jamal Green, Commissioner Brandon Johnson, Alderwoman Sophia King, Alderman Roderick Sawyer, and we have Paul Vallis with us. We do not have Willie Wilson joining us, and the incumbent Mayor Lori Lightfoot was not able to join us, but she did send a statement.
That's right.
And I'll read some of what she had to say.
You know, and as you read the statement, to be fair to the mayor in particular, and to Dr. Wilson, they had outstanding commitments. Everything that we've asked them to do, they have done. But she did have a prior commitment on the west side of Chicago, a community that many of us have neglected. And she said, I can't break that commitment to them. And so she sent this message to us to read to you. Tia Ewing.
I and my team have been very clear that I simply cannot make the push forum. I have a long-standing commitment to be on the west side that was on the calendar for some time before we heard anything about the push forum. I cannot reschedule or cancel the west side event, sorry.
Okay, so give it up for Dr. Willie Wilson and Mayor Lori Lightfoot in absentia. Everyone, please mute your phones or put them on vibrate. Let me make sure I've done that.
You did. Yours has been vibrating.
Okay,
so
thank you very
it's
much.
done.
All right, all right, all right. And once again, why don't you explain the protocols for the debate?
So we're going to have opening statements from the candidates. You get 1 minute for those opening statements. When we do ask questions, we have a few that are yes or no, and then we have several that you will fully answer. You will have 45 seconds to do so, and then you will get a 1 minute close. There are no interruptions allowed from the audience.
And no interruptions allowed from the stage.
The candidates either, yes.
No rebuttals. Because it's a forum, not a debate, and we want to hear as much from each of you as you can, as we can hear from you. So please keep that in mind as you're delivering your remarks. So shall we begin? All right, put your hands together. Let's begin the Rainbow Push People's Forum.
So we're going to start with a 1 minute opening from Representative Cambion Buckner, and then we'll move down.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Cam Buckner, and I am a son of Chicago. I was born and raised here on the far south side. I left for college, returned for law school, and I now represent the city from north to south in the Illinois General Assembly, where I had the privilege of being the Black Caucus chair for the last 2 years and doing some tremendous work for our community, including passing the most sweeping criminal justice reform in the history of this country, expanding and extending the earned income tax credit, and helping lead the fight to make Illinois the 9th state in the country to ban deadly assault weapons. I'm running for mayor of Chicago because what's happening today is not working. And I remember as a young boy in this city, Chicago being the city that works. But if we're honest with ourselves, we realize that even when the city that works worked, it didn't work for everybody. And so I'm running for mayor not to bring us back to some nostalgic version of who we used to be, but to give Chicago the chance to be the city that she has always deserved to be. I'm looking forward to having that conversation with you guys this morning. Thank you.
Sponsoring organizations. I'm Chuy Garcia. I come from community activism in Chicago. I'm also the product in politics of a movement to empower Black and brown people in Chicago. Its roots are in the Harold Washington movement, historical occasion for Chicago. I'm now running for mayor because I want to lead this city and make unprecedented investments in disinvested communities, particularly the South and the West Sides. I want equity. I want to be the leader that makes an unprecedented effort at comprehensive community development in these communities. My history is clear. I helped dismantle the Chicago machine. I've been consistent in Congress. I've been a champion of working and poor people, civil rights, and human rights as well. I thank you for your consideration. I look forward to discussing the issues facing our city today and Black Chicago. Thank you.
Well, first, good morning, everybody. And I first want to give love to Reverend Jesse Jackson, as well as Rainbow Push, as well as Pastor Brooks, who I think is almost at $30 million at building the center. Can we clap it up for that? It's amazing. You know, my name is Jamal Green, and I'm running for mayor because over half my life in our communities, I fought for change, and I didn't see any politicians come with any solutions or any come into my community at all. I'm running because we need a leader with vision and not just another politician with memories. We need to make sure that every person in this city and all of our young people have the opportunity to grow and thrive in our city. I'm running because politicians have lied to us so long, and now it's time for a leader that's going to work with the people to create a future we can all believe in.
Thank you, and good morning. My name is Brandon Johnson. I'm proud to represent the west side of Chicago and the western suburbs as the Cook County Commissioner. You know, the best job that I've ever had, though, is that of a public school teacher and as an organizer, pushing back against the corporatization and privatization of our public schools and opening up an opportunity for every single child to have access to a free public education. You know, my wife and I were raising our children on the west side of Chicago in Austin, We love our community, but it is one of the more violent neighborhoods in the city of Chicago, and that's why as Cook County Commissioner, we've invested hundreds of millions of dollars into violence prevention. We have the largest universal guaranteed basic income in the entire country, eliminating up to $1 billion of debt, building 2 affordable housing units for seniors and breaking ground on 1. As the next mayor of the city of Chicago, I'm running to usher in a better, stronger, safer Chicago, and I'm looking forward to the conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Sophia King. Welcome this morning. I'm running for mayor of the city of Chicago because I love this city. But what differs on my platform and everybody else's is that I've actually been bringing equity to our community over the last 6.5 years and even before. So whether it's leading the fight for a $15 minimum wage, which brought 400,000 predominantly black and brown women out of poverty, or whether it's leading the Michael Reese development, which shows that a community can see upside and the developer can see upside, or whether it's leading changing Congress Parkway to Ida B. Wells, DuSable Drive, all of these things I've been doing on behalf of the community. I've also, in my ward, 40% participation for minorities, mainly African Americans, has been the norm, not the ceiling, but the norm. I will continue to bring that type of equity to the community on the 5th floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Roderick Sawyer.
Thank you and good morning. For the record, my name is Roderick Sawyer, and I've been proud of the service that I've provided to the city for the last 12 years. But I've also been equally proud of the work that I've done about 30 years ago with Operation Push. When violence was at its highest, we formed groups connecting with those from street organizations to bring those numbers down, and we were able to bring those numbers down almost by half. But I'm also proud of the work that I've done now in the City Council, leading in criminal justice reform, leading in business development. Equity is always at my forefront. I want to make sure that whatever we pass in City Council has an equity provision in it. That means that blacks have a seat at the table instead of always being on the menu. I want to make sure that as we're going forward in the city, we want to make sure that we have development in our areas that have been disinvested and really make sure that we have a chance to make cities flourish for a black Chicago once again. Again, I look forward to this conversation and I look forward to the engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Vallis.
Thank you. I'm Paul Vallis, and I'm running for mayor because there's a crisis in leadership. Every single problem that we're facing, from a degraded police department to deteriorating schools to budgets that are increasingly inequitable and unaffordable, is a product of bad leadership, bad decisions from the 5th floor. This is all about electing a mayor who can not only bring a vision, but more importantly, can draw from the community. In every single public service job I've had, from Chicago Public Schools to city budget director to transforming schools in Philadelphia to rebuilding schools in New Orleans after Katrina, my success has always been a product of my ability to draw from within the community and assemble the leadership teams to go forward. I will do that here. I have done it in the past, and I will do it in the future. I look forward to the debate.
Thank you. So when we start our questions, there are some questions that are lightning rod questions, which means yes or no will be the answer. And our first question will actually start back on this end. We'll start with Paul Vallis. It is a yes or no question. Would you support the repeal of qualified immunity? Why or why not?
I would not. And why? Because if you eliminate qualified immunity,
It's just yes or no.
Oh, no. Sorry about that. No, I would not.
All right, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Alderman Sawyer?
I would consider it. Yes.
I would consider it as well.
Yes.
I would, and I supported the George Floyd Act, Justice and Policing.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. And the second question.
One thing we do want to say for the audience, I do hear some blurting out. Yes. There is no blurting out allowed. No interruptions allowed at all from the audience. Thank you.
That's right. And no booing. We really want everyone to be heard. Please, let us do that. Okay, no, let's do it that way. Okay, how would you make the black and brown South and West Side communities look like the more prosperous white North Side communities? The black and brown communities are far less resourced than white communities in the city of Chicago. What is your plan to make this city fair? Let's start with, well, let's go straight down the line. State Representative Buckner.
Thank you for that question. Listen, we look all around this city and we see the signs and the symbols of inequity. We see the signs and the symbols of disinvestment and disenfranchisement and communities that have been left behind. And it's by design, all right? As mayor of Chicago, the work I will do to bring Chicago to the equitable forefront is through making sure that our zoning code and the way that we developed in this city is up to par. We've got things that we can do with TIFs. The fact that TIFs are going to communities on the north side that I represent, like the Gold Coast and downtown and River North that don't need them, but in Bronzeville and Woodline and Washington Park, we are scraping for scraps. That's problematic. And so the leadership has to come from the top down. And as the mayor of Chicago, I will speak with one voice for the black and brown people of Chicago, saying cut us in or cut it out.
Thank you. Congressman Garcia.
The inequities that were underscored and dramatically shown in COVID, in the pandemic, and in the civil unrest that occurred after the murder of George Floyd and Laquan McDonald show why we have to rebuild Chicago in an equitable manner. My economic development plan says more, but I would tell you this: unprecedented investment using the Infrastructure and Jobs Act for things like housing and retail development, making sure there's adequate access to health care. Also using the Manufacturing Act, also known as the CHIPS Act, to bring sustainable manufacturing to communities that haven't seen it in a long time. Finally, the growth of the tech sector, provide pipelines and apprenticeships so that young people can go into good paying jobs without necessarily going to college or universities.
Thank you. Jamal Green.
Well, it's going to be bridging the racial wealth gap in the city of Chicago. And when you do that, you have to uproot some of the structures. We know that these neighborhoods have been redlined, so one of our ideas is that we're going to have a city-owned bank that invests in the south and west sides that are with untraditional loans, as well as in our contracting process. When you look at the amount of contracts that contractors on the south and west sides get, it's abysmal. And so we need to take black people out of minorities and give them their own identification so that they can get their fair share of contracts. We need to make sure that we're investing in housing and home ownership with single-family mortgage bonds to bring homeowners to the neighborhoods. We must start to uproot the structures that have been plaguing these inequities for so long and put new ones in place so that everyone gets their fair share in this city.
Thank you. Commissioner Brandon Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, we have to acknowledge how we actually got here, right? The budgetary schemes from the 90s is why we are in the economic despair that we're experiencing right now. And so as your mayor, I'm gonna always tell you the truth. Keeping it 100 is a part of my mantra. And so that's why I'm the only person on this stage who've actually put together a budget plan, right? In my first term, we eliminate the debt that was created from the 90s while making critical investments up to $1 billion, and we do it without raising property taxes. And yes, I do believe that the ultra-rich and major corporations have to pay their fair share in taxes. That's how we unite this city. Clearly, Joe Biden read my budget plan because he agrees with me as well.
Thank you. Alderwoman King.
So a lot of big plans. Let me tell you what I've done and what I will continue to do. Again, Michael Reese Development, $1 billion striking development, $25 million commitment to schools, 20% commitment to affordable housing on site, 60% commitment to minority participation. In my ward, in Bronzeville, which cranes are flying, you've got CIBC Bank, 100% African American participation. You've got 4400 Grove, 49% African American participation, 89% minority participation, 508 East Pershing, 49% African American participation. I have cut you in. You need to cut me into the 5th floor so we can continue that type of true equity. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Sawyer.
The true indication of a real leader's intentionality. When we talk about disparities in our neighborhoods, you have to have a leader that has the intention to want to get these things done. All 77 neighborhoods should be self-sustaining and all have all the amenities that you all desire. Each neighborhood should have a grocery store. Each one should have professional services. They should all have places to entertain yourselves. What we need is someone that has that experience and intention to want to get these things done, someone that lives and born and raised and still lives within 1 mile from this very place, that has represented people that are 98% black. I understand this because I have been disinvested. I want to make sure that we all get that opportunity, and there are ways we can do this. We can manifest all of our funds that we have and be laser focused on making sure we do what's right for all of our neighborhoods, for the cultural diversity and the intentionality of black people, brown people, and all those that have been historically underserved.
Thank you. Paul Vallis?
You need to create the infrastructure for investment. And what does that mean? That means creating an independent development authority, independent of the fifth floor, independent of aldermanic privilege, who can focus on economic development in South and West Side. Secondly, you need to have fair share of TIF monies, casino monies, gaming, et cetera, going into that fund, so you have a community investment fund that they can tap into. Third, you need to secure all the land. There's 4.5 square miles of property that's not on the tax rolls, property that needs to be secured and remediated. 15,000 residential buildings that have been literally abandoned that can be secured. You secure that property, you remediate that property, you smack 10-year property tax abatements, and now you have the economic development engine, now you have the capital investment, and now you have the property. When I ran the Chicago Public Schools and built 30 new buildings and 48 additions, 55% of those contracts went to minority and women-owned businesses. Imagine if you applied that approach to the $28 billion that the city spends, that the city controls every year.
Thank you. So this next question is a lightning rod question. It is a yes or no answer. And we're going to start with Paul Vallis. Will you support increasing the number of charter schools? Yes or no? Yes. Alderman Sawyer?
Not correct. No. I'm sorry. No.
Okay.
No.
That's fine. Alderwoman King?
There's currently a moratorium. I'll honor that.
No.
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 Thank you.
Another lightning rod question. The follow-up is, will you support increased funding and resources for neighborhood public schools? State Representative Buckner.
Yes.
Absolutely, yes.
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 I'm doing it now.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so the next question, we'll start with Paul Vallis here. And the question is a full question. You can give a full answer for this question. How will you use vacant housing stock and land to use to support mixed income and the unhoused?
Well, first of all, I think what you need to do is, you have 15,000 residential facilities right now that are unoccupied. I would seize those facilities. I would remediate them. I would turn them over to community-based organizations. And those houses could not only be used for those individuals who are in need of affordable housing, but there's also a need for domestic violence housing. For example, there's only 150 beds for victims of domestic violence, and there's 200 new complaints a day, literally. So you can not only provide the housing for affordable housing, but you can also target individuals who are the victims of domestic violence. You can provide housing for individuals who are returning from incarceration, in other words, returning citizens, and you can provide other targeted housing for people with disabilities. You can also remove the obstacles to garden units. In other words, allowing unimproved property to convert to garden units. You could create an additional 100,000 slots, 100,000 affordable apartments if you did that. Those things would make a difference right away.
Thank you. Alderman Sawyer.
Thank you. First of all, we have a city of Chicago owns in excess of 10,000 vacant lots. And that means that we're not getting property tax revenues from these individual lots. What we need to do is assemble these lots and have a plan. There's a plan out there right now that wants to take a portion of property tax, real estate transfer taxes to put into a fund. And that fund would accumulate almost $150 million. It's well-intentioned, but there's nothing in that ordinance that states that there's going to be true equity. That means reinvesting this money in those places that have been historically disinvested in, and reinvesting in those people that have also been historically disinvested in. These people could be the owners, operators, contractors to help redevelop this land in our areas, and we can provide affordable housing in these areas and also provide employment and job and contract opportunities for those that have been historically disinvested.
Thank you. Alderwoman King?
Yeah, so affordable housing is the responsibility of the entire city and not just segregated parts of it. I represent from downtown, literally, to Hyde Park, Bronzeville, we used to call it the low end growing up, but we've put affordable housing everywhere. We have a 1000M, Cranes growing up. Affordable housing is going to be in that building. Wabash, affordable housing there. We've got affordable housing all over. You have to be intentional. Inequity didn't happen in a vacuum, so you have to have the political will and be intentional. But I also think we should use a tool called opportunity zones. We could bring billions of dollars into the brown and black community by using that tool to incentivize development in our community. That's one that I would leverage on the 5th floor to build even more affordable housing.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
Well, thank you. I do support Bring Chicago Home. 65,623 individuals who are without homes, over 20,000 students that are unhoused. As a teacher, I've seen it. And so this is going to raise hundreds of millions of dollars, not just for housing, but for wraparound services. Look, when my wife and I purchased our first home, we needed 2 government programs to help us buy our first home. We made $80,000. We were the richest people in the world in our family. And so that's why I passed the Just Housing Amendment that ended housing discrimination for those seeking housing who were formerly incarcerated. When unemployment for white men was 30% in this country, they called it a national crisis. We have that level of unemployment in Black Chicago. We can rebuild our homes, put the housing stock back on the road, because there's stuff to dig, there are things to build, and there are lives to save. And that's what we'll have under a Johnson administration.
Thank you. Jamal Green?
Well, when you talk about building affordable housing, one of the ideas I already talked about of creating a public bank so that these communities who are redlined have an institution that will invest in them. We also need a redevelopment authority that take all of the vacant property and dispose of it without the aldermen stepping in, because a lot of the aldermen use a lot of these properties for reasons in the indictments that's coming down. But listen, we must make sure that we also move forward incentives, right, for single floor commercial buildings such as grocery stores, box stores, churches. You know, we can build affordable housing units on top. We have to loosen the single family ordinance so that we can build houses on top as well as use the basements as garden units. We have the opportunity to build affordable housing. We're 120,000 units behind, and it's going to be the intentionality and putting the structures in place to invest in these communities, and that's what we're going to do under a Green administration.
Thank you. Congressman Garcia?
Building new housing in Chicago is a top priority. We can't rebuild Chicago, grow its population, stabilize the property tax base if we don't do that. In Congress, I tried to pass with Maxine Waters a $150 billion investment in housing locally. I would direct my Department of Planning, Housing, and the other infrastructure departments to work with community nonprofit developers, other low-income housing developers who've already made plans in their communities, whether it's Roseland or Englewood or West Garfield Park, East Garfield Park, or North Lawndale. The plans are there. They want to accelerate that building. We've got to work to make it happen. We have an opportunity with infrastructure as well as TIF funding, grants and loans so that we make it available and start growing our population, get Chicago back on track for everyone.
Thank you. Representative Buckner?
Let's start with this. Housing is a human right, number one. Repeating what Brandon said, we got 65,000 homeless folks in this city, 20,000 of them being young people, 10,000 vacant lots, 30,000 blighted properties in this city. I challenge you when you go home to go on everybody's website and see who actually has a housing plan. That's a different story. Listen, I support the Bring Chicago Home ordinance as well, but we've got to do more. We've got to make sure that those dollars are going to the right place. So we have to put money in permanent supportive housing. We have to refund the Trouble Building Initiative. We have to stand back up the New Homes for Chicago program. We have to have an alternative dwelling unit pilot be expanded from where it is right now. I'll put an affordable housing czar in City Hall on day one to do this work to make sure that Chicago is the most affordable, housing-friendly city in this entire country.
Thank you.
This question, of course, is for the whole panel. The Natural Resources Defense Council reports high lead levels have been found in water in Baltimore, Detroit, Milwaukee, Newark, New York City, Pittsburgh, Washington, D.C., and right here in Chicago. One of their analyses found that between 2018 and 2020, 56% of the U.S. population drank from water systems with detectable levels of lead, which impacts the intellectual, physical development of our children and adults. What is your plan to fix and replace lead water pipes throughout the city? Mr. Vallis.
Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to make sure that every single family has water filtration systems, because it's going to take 50 years, 40 years. I don't care if it takes 5 years to replace all the lead pipes. And at the rate they're going, it's going to take 500 years. children are still being poisoned because any element of lead does long-term damage. In addition, once you've replaced the lead pipes, you haven't solved other problems. For example, the Tribune just issued a report about a month ago that talked about the other cancer-causing agents that are in the water. So we need to get priority number one, water filtration systems in every single household. Not everybody can go out and purchase bottled water. Not everyone can purchase a water filter. It's the easiest thing to do, and it's what they did in Newark when they embarked upon their lead pipe replacement. They made sure everybody had clean water.
Alderman Sawyer.
Yes, in addition to providing the testing kits and the filtration devices, which our office and I'm sure a lot of the local offices always try to do, we want to make sure we have a long-term plan for correcting this. That means we have to work with our federal partners. We may even have to issue some debt, and I hate to do that, but this is far too important. This is the lives of our children. We have to do anything necessary to get these lead lines removed from our homes and get the children and our families safe and potable drinking water. So that's including working with federal and state partners to see what we can do on that level, working to trim our fat and have money available, and maybe even floating bonds to get this work done. But it's far too important of an issue. Obviously, we want to support the Department of Environment that would assist us in having experts to provide us other additional information on how to get this done. But this is far too important of an issue to let lie for way too long.
Alderman King.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to go to your sink and wonder whether you or your family are going to have lead poisoning that may impact you for the rest of your life. New Jersey did this. They replaced their lead lines. It takes the political will, collaboration with our counterparts. They did it by changing some laws because what's stopping us, we've changed like hundreds, literally, out of thousands that we should have already changed by literally working with our partners in the state to change some legislation so that we can have a government agency working on private. That's literally what's kind of blocking us, so that we, landlords and different entities that are blocking us from making sure we have rapid change. So the political will and inclination and the ability to bring people together to get it done, like I've already done and will continue to do. Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, environmental justice is a big deal in my home. I've suffered with asthma growing up and still have challenges there. That's why I'm committed to not just expanding the Department of the Environment, but making sure that we have a real reflection from the people who are most harmed by it. But it's also within the first 100 days important that I pass a cumulative impact study so that we can get a full breadth of what is happening environmentally throughout the city of Chicago. Of course, as a public school teacher, I've taught in those buildings where the poison has been delivered. And so, of course, this is an opportunity for us, again, to put our people to work, to restore and retrofit our buildings, not just so that we clear up the toxicity, but we do it in an equitable way, and that it becomes a top priority once you all vote for me in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Jamal Green.
Sorry, I need to reclaim that time. 380,000 lead pipes. I was one of the first people to really talk about this over 5 years ago. And I'm really mad at some of the politicians in the race who haven't said anything about it. Kids are being poisoned each and every day on the south and west sides of Chicago, all throughout our neighborhoods, and it was the city's fault because the city mandated these pipes many years ago. And so we need to get them changed. And this is also a unique opportunity to have a massive jobs program throughout the city of Chicago. We have billions of dollars of infrastructure money coming down. We could be preparing these young people and the folks in these neighborhoods to get in line and change these pipes. We have this opportunity because now we're putting folks to work. Folks are able to live middle-class lives, and we're getting the lead out of the water. We're doing a justice to the city of Chicago, and that's what we're going to do under our administration. It's going to be a big priority of ours to change each and every lead pipes and put people to work.
Congressman Garcia.
I have 6 grandchildren who are drinking this water every day, so I get it. I'm worried about them. In Congress, I helped deliver funding that has come to Chicago, but we're not utilizing it rapidly enough to meet the challenge. I'm committed to removing lead pipes and to ensuring that in the new public works projects that will be taking place, that Black, Latino, and women workers will be participating in renewing Chicago's infrastructure and making drinking water safe for everyone, children and everyone else, as well as to look at measures to provide relief for people who can't afford to pay their water bills. Thank you.
State Representative Buckner.
Y'all, our people are being poisoned by the government that's supposed to protect us. And then being told by the government, find a way to pay for it, a way to make your water safe. As J. Maul brought up, the city code up until 1986 required that we use lead service lines, which is why Chicago has more lead service lines than anywhere else in the country. This is not a Flint issue, it's not a Jackson issue, it's happening right here in this city. The Mayoral administration ignored this, it pretended like it wasn't a problem. The Lightfoot administration has said, well, yeah, it's a problem, but they haven't done anything about it. Why can Denver and Detroit figure out how to fix this, but we can't? This is about political will. This is about leadership, and we're missing the mark. We can't continue to poison our people and then look at them and say, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with us? Let's do the actual work.
Thank you. This next question will start with State Representative Buckner. What is your position on the placement of red light cameras across the city, given they are primarily located in Black and brown communities?
I've been very clear about this. We have seen when the government needs some more money, they come to us. They come to Black communities and brown communities and put red light cameras and the like up in order to find us, right? And they say they do it in the name of safety, but we know that's not the truth. And studies have shown that, right? So I've been very clear. We do need safe streets for all. And the way you do that is with slow street infrastructure. But you can't bring these cameras into our communities and find a way to tax folks who cannot afford those taxes in a way just to bloat the city's budget. It's wrong, and it will stop under my administration.
Thank you. Congressman Garcia.
Red light cameras have a disparate impact on Black and Latino communities in particular. They make the difference between people being able to buy groceries, get medicine, pay their heating bills, on and on. It has a real impact in their life. In 2015, I vowed that if elected mayor then, I would get rid of red light cameras. I continue to hold the same position and will do that as mayor of the city of Chicago.
Thank you. J. Maul Green.
Really shocking, Congressman. I didn't expect that out you. We definitely need to eliminate red light cameras in this city. But we also have to go further. One of our most popular policies is the fact that we said that we would ban the boot and seizures of vehicles for unpaid parking tickets. We must change how we tax poor people in this city because it is insane. You do not continue to add more poor people taxes. We also have to reform our ticket fines and fees system. We shouldn't be doubling and tripling tickets. We need to make it easier for folks. We're really giving 3 million tickets a year to fill a budget gap, and Cook County has the most Chapter 13 bankruptcies in the country, and it's all due to debt owed to the city of Chicago. So we're ruining people's lives. We're stopping them from being able to create generational wealth. We're stopping them from being able to be homeowners, and it's going to stop under our administration and get rid of all of the corruption in this state.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson.
Well, this is an important question. That's why my first plan is a budget plan. None of these plans work if you actually don't have the ability to tell the truth to the people of Chicago how you're going to pay for it. Chicago sometimes calls my plan the tax the rich plan, and it's the right plan. A teacher and a firefighter should not pay the same tax rate as a billionaire. Look, we're going to eliminate this debt. We're going to make up to $1 billion of investment without raising property taxes. Here's what I'm floating as well. I got to look at the contract once I'm mayor. I believe we can phase them out. In the meantime, I'm saying if you get a ticket in a particular community, perhaps that revenue should just stay in that zip code until we phase it out. We got to be smart about it, and that's what you're going to have when I'm the mayor of Chicago.
Thank you. Alderwoman King.
Thank you. So I've seen the plan. Inequitable distribution. Right away, we made $40 million in 3 months off the backs of Black and brown people, which is why I fought against it. What we could have done was redistribute the cameras. Simply, I raised my hand for cameras on Michigan Avenue. I had other folks raise them for cameras on Lincoln Park. They're not there. They are inequitably distributed. We could redistribute them and make 10 times as much. We can't continue to build our city on the backs of black and brown people. I have been for black and brown people, will continue to be for black and brown people when I'm on the 5th floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Sawyer.
Thank you. This is actually a very important issue because the combined revenue from the speed and red light cameras is in excess of $150 million a year. But let me tell you what I've done. In 2014, I filed an ordinance removing the red and speed light cameras over time so that we can find out ways to replace that revenue. As mayor, I would just reintroduce what I introduced then. The only difference was then I did not have the support from my colleagues to do that. I think as mayor, I can convince my colleagues on the city council to do it this time. So I'll just do what I've already done, and I'll do it again. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Vallis.
Look, the red light cameras, the speed cameras, the punitive water billing system that just adds penalties after penalties, these are just, this is taxing the poor. 10,000 bankruptcies over the last 5 years, overwhelmingly low-income families, overwhelmingly black families. I mean, we need to fade out. We need to phase out the speed light cameras, the red light cameras. We need to revisit our water billing system. We need to provide an amnesty for those who have not paid and have not been able to pay because of income limitations. Look, there were more speed camera tickets written last year than the entire population of the city of Chicago. At the end of the day, we need to phase this out because this is just not about public safety. It's about taxing the poor.
Thank you.
We're about to have a series of lightning rod questions that are simple, that require simple yes or no answers. This first question, would you be willing to tax the transactions at the Mercantile Exchange and the Board of Trade as we tax other transactions throughout the city? State Representative Buckner.
No.
Congressman Garcia.
No, it needs to be federal.
Jamal Green. No.
Needs to be federal, no.
Yes, it's in my budget plan. Tax the rich.
Alderwoman King.
It's not that simple. No, it wouldn't work.
Alderman Sawyer.
No, I would not.
Mr. Vallis.
No, they'll just move their transactions out of town.
The next question, also yes or no. We're going to start with Paul Vallis. Would you support a third airport in the south suburb?
Yes.
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 This is another yes or no question. Do you have a plan for equity in financial investment and community development in black and brown businesses and communities?
Yes.
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 Doing it.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, this next question starts with Paul Vallis. Would you spend any city tax dollars to keep the Chicago Bears here in the city of Chicago?
No.
No.
Yes.
I'm thinking about it.
Jamal Green.
No.
No. And legislature needs to make sure that Chicagoans are
No.
Yes or no?
no.
Yes or no?
Sorry.
State Representative Buckner.
No, we can't even fund schools, no.
Thank you so much. And this question, of course, you get the 45-second response. According to the Washington Post, from 2010 to 2020, nationally, $1.5 billion has been spent by taxpayers settling police misconduct cases. Over the past several years, the city of Chicago has paid out more than $300 million in such cases. As mayor, how would you ensure that our community does not pay, that our city, our taxpayers, do not pay for police misconduct with our tax dollars? Mr. Vallis.
Well, first of all, you need to make sure that police have training and constant training. For example, there's no unit in the law department to assess and evaluate why these lawsuits are being successful or what the police department is doing to address them. There's no risk management unit, something that we all talked about in the last election, something that the mayor promised. So anytime there's a lawsuit, and let me point out that among the $1 billion spent the last 10 years, about $350 million has come from settlements that are not police related. So the city simply does not have a plan to assess and evaluate what has happened and to take the appropriate action. First of all, enforcing the consent decree will be an important step towards reducing those type of lawsuits. But again, the consent decree is heavily dependent on command and control and effective professional development, all things that are absent from the mayor's agenda.
Alderman Sawyer.
Yes, we want to make sure we have to do a few things. I do support some of the things that Mr. Vallis just stated, but we need to make sure that when we're assessing and managing that risk, that we're making sure that we can see what's going on and get the police the proper training so that we can reduce that risk so it doesn't happen in the future. Part of doing that is having effective police reform. I've been proud to have been the architect of police reform here on the City Council. When you go vote on February 28th, you'll be voting for community commissions. That was something that I formed, and I'm proud of it. But we have to do more. We have to make sure those commissions work by establishing that trust once again between police and community, and making sure that once we do that, we can help the police solve crimes. We can also, in correlation, get our violence numbers down, especially as it relates to police misconduct. Because in addition to that, one last thing, we always want to talk about our mental health services, because we have to make sure that when people are in crisis, we're not sending law enforcement officers to do something that a medical professional could just as well solve well. So we have to make sure that we're doing both and not either or. Thank you.
Alderman King.
So we definitely want the people who were wrong to get their settlements. Let's just be clear about that. But we can do a lot of things. We have to change the culture in the police department. Part of that is training. Part of that is alternative responses to 911, which over 50% of calls to 911 are. But if we're keeping it real, we also need to fill those thousands of vacancies with people who look like us, with African Americans. There's a $115,000 job with benefits. We need to make sure that our people are getting those jobs. This last class, we were the lowest. Latinos were first, whites were second, African Americans were barely there. We have to fill those jobs with people who look like us.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, the challenge is we spend too much on policing, you all. We spend more on policing and jails than we do educating our people. And that's why I have a full sweeping public safety plan that does get at the immediacy while also addressing the root causes of the violence that exists in the city of Chicago. That's why I'm going to pass within the first 100 days treatment, not trauma, because that's going to put the professionals on the front line so that in the case of Quantonio and Betty, you can't have weapons on the scene when a mental health crisis is breaking out. Look, over 40% of the violence that happens in the city of Chicago, it happens in 6% of the city of Chicago. Look, we know where the propensities are. Look, black folks call police more than anybody else, and we hate when they show up, right? This is why we have to have a full program, an operation that deals with the immediacy, mental health treatment, while also making sure that we're putting young people to work. The greatest predictor of driving down violence in the city of Chicago is youth employment. That's what my plan does.
Jamal Green.
Listen, you cannot train white supremacists to do what they're supposed to do. We have to stop this training bullcrap. I'm really tired of it. The reality of the situation is that we need to put insurance on every single one of these police officers and allow them to carry their own insurance policies. And if they don't have insurance, then they can't be police officers. We got to change this system of spending $100 million a year on police misconduct. We're also spending another couple $100 million a year on overtime. We're spending $2 billion a year on operating costs. It is going to end under a Green administration, and I'm tired of hearing that we can train our way out of it or change the culture. No, we need to reallocate money from the police budget and invest in the communities as they should, and then we won't have this problem long term. We have a lot of work to do, and we must invest in people.
Congressman Garcia.
Yeah, the exorbitant amounts of dollars that have been paid due to police conduct can't be tolerated anymore. If we implement the consent decree, it moves us a whole lot closer to getting there. But also the embrace of constitutional accountability and community policing is critical to build a modern police system in Chicago that also has civilians at the helm. The community councils are a part of that, but also a corporation council and someone in the department responsible for constitutional policing will help create checks and balances and prevent the waste of taxpayer dollars to victims of abuse.
State Representative Buckner.
I'm a little disappointed to hear so many of my colleagues jump at the first chance to talk about training. In October of 2014, when Jason Van Dyke murdered Laquan McDonald, at what point was his training gonna kick in? Shot 1, shot 2, shot 3, shot 4, so on and so forth? Listen, let's knock that off, man. We know that it's not enough to change policing in Chicago. We have to change Chicago, and I hope that's why all of us are running for mayor. When we look at what's going on in this city, there are things that we have to do from a policy standpoint. Good Kids Mad City has presented the Peace Book Ordinance. We have to pass it. We have to pass the Anjanette Young Ordinance to make sure that we're shoring this up. And the last thing, going back to one of the earlier lightning round questions, we have to end the federal doctrine of qualified immunity. Nobody in here gets to go to work and break the law and be okay with it. It doesn't happen at your job. It shouldn't happen at their job.
Thank you. The next question will start with State Representative Buckner, and it is, what policies will your administration center to curb the Black exodus from the city of Chicago? What is your plan to attract African Americans back to the city?
So people always ask, why have Black folks left Chicago? And my answer always is, we didn't leave, we got kicked out. And we got kicked out because we didn't have the quality of life that we deserve. I represent both Washington Park and Streeterville in the General Assembly. Washington Park has a life expectancy of 59 years old. Streeterville has a life expectancy of 91 years old, and y'all know what the difference is, right? And so, listen, let's be real. We're gonna build a true city where you live does not determine if you live. That's how we bring Black folks back to Chicago. That's how we keep Black folks in Chicago, giving them the same thing that every other demographic wants, opportunity and safety. Through the work that I put forth in my plan, we can bring both of those things to the city of Chicago, and specifically people who have been left behind in communities that have been benignly neglected and left behind for a very long time.
Thank you. Congressman Garcia.
Look, the legacy of redlining, the massive demolition of public housing, structural racism is what's driving people out of the city of Chicago because it is unsafe for so many people. As an urban planner trained at the University of Illinois and a community development practitioner with colleagues all over the city of Chicago when I was in the nonprofit sector and in philanthropy, comprehensive community development and unprecedented levels to rebuild Chicago, and especially the people that have been most adversely affected, those who have left. Over 250,000 Black Chicagoans left over the past 20 years. That is shameful to Chicago. We need to do unprecedented investment in housing, in healthcare, in schools, and shopping areas, and above all, safe transit for everyone to connect people to jobs.
Thank you. Jamal Green.
Well, we have to do a lot of things, and I agree with my colleague Cam when he said that we were put out, right? When you look at how they knocked down all of the projects and they promised us thousands of affordable housing units, have we got those units? No. We have to really form our commitment that housing is a right in the city of Chicago. One of the things that we talk about a lot is using a single-family mortgage bond to back home loans and give the down payment and closing cost assistance to those folks in the neighborhoods and who have left the neighborhoods so that they can come back. We need to right our wrongs in the city of Chicago. And we also have to have a pipeline of good-paying middle-class jobs in these neighborhoods. We got 50,000 manufacturing jobs. Our schools should have trade programs and tech hubs in them. We have so much opportunity, but we're not investing in people. Grocery stores are shutting down. The city should step in and start having ownership of grocery stores so that grocery stores can stay. We have to make sure that Black families have basic human rights, a quality education, and everything that they need in their communities, and we're going to do that under a Green administration.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, so as an organizer, we've witnessed in the city of Chicago how schools have been defunded, public transportation has been defunded, access to housing has been defunded, so forth and so on. The Negro Removal Act was heightened during the school closures. It was hard. I'm still traumatized by it. And there were elected leaders who thought that that was the pathway forward. Do you all know that there are 1,000 Black children missing from the school closings? We literally have no account for them. That was intentional. And there were black, brown, white elected officials that said it was okay to continue the force out of black people. It's why the politics from the 90s that put schools on probation, that ridiculed parents for wanting to see their children have a well-rounded education, those policies led to the loss of black educators, right? That's why I put forth a plan that actually invests in people. Everyone else is talking about what they want to do, but have not put forth a plan of how they're going to pay for it. I'm going to keep it 100. I'm going to invest in the communities that have been harmed the most. I've done it as a teacher, as an organizer, as a Cook County Commissioner. Can't wait to do it when I'm your mayor.
Alderwoman King.
Again, plans are great. But when you're doing it, it's the best predictor of what you're going to continue to do. So one of the most equitable developments that's being heralded by the New York Times is the Michael Reese development. Again, $25 million commitment for schools, 20% affordable housing on site, commitment to 60% diversity. Also, plan for transformation. We are actually bringing back people. 4400 Grove, where the Brownsville Winery is. We have CHA units that were brought back there. 508 East Pershing, again, where there's over 40% African American participation. Brought back CHA and affordable housing units there. Lake Park Place on Lake Park, brought back affordable CHA housing units there. I am doing the work that you want all of these people to do. What people have done is a great prediction of what they're going to do. I've been doing the work. We'll continue it on the 5th floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Sawyer.
Yes. The indicator on the success of Chicago is going to depend on how we treat our children and our older persons. And I think we've kind of failed on both. We need to make investments, true investments, for both of these individual groups. And that's mean providing opportunity like I provided on 87th Street when we brought 1,000 new jobs to the Discover Center. And sometimes people say, oh, Discover Center is Fortune 500. Remember this, we also attracted someone to buy that building to bring the Discover Center there, and the Discover Center pays their rent to a black man. Just understand that. This is what we're trying to do in equity in Chicago. We want to make sure that both our youth and our older people have opportunities. We brought in the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership. From 18 to 80, they provide opportunities for everybody. If we're not taking care of our children in our schools, in our trades, in our employment and job opportunities, and our older persons in the development of extracurriculars, intergenerational projects, and job placement, because older people like to work too. We need to take both of these opportunities and make Chicago better and stronger.
Thank you. Paul Vallis.
Polls tell you why people are leaving. First of all, unsafe neighborhoods. When you have 406,000 high-priority 911 calls that are not responded to, including 32,000 assaults and batteries in progress, overwhelmingly in poor communities because there aren't police officers available, that's scary. That drives people out, people who have the ability to move. When you shut schools down for 15 consecutive months in defiance of the science, and you don't allow 56,000 charter school kids who go to public schools, charter schools or public schools, you bar them from using public buildings, empty buildings, half empty, 90% empty buildings. I mean, they are schools, 96% black and Latino kids. That drives people out of the city. And when you don't have an infrastructure to make the type of investments on the south and west sides, and all we have is with the Mayor South and Southwest initiatives, these one-off projects or these warmed over Rahm Emanuel projects, then you have exodus. So the bottom line is, these issues are correctable, and I've tried to articulate how to address these issues in my burning plan for the south and west sides.
Thank you.
WTTW extensively covered the Chicago Police Department's many ties to officers with white supremacist extremist organizations such as the Proud Boys. How will your administration root out these officers with these associations and restore trust between the Chicago Police Department and communities of color? Mr. Vallis.
Well, first of all, by barring them. Period. I mean, there should be no associations with any of these groups at the end of the day, and we should simply bar them. And if they are members of those organizations, then we should, through a legal process, we should remove them, and we should retire them and move them out of the system, period.
Alderman Sawyer.
Yes. Again, I've just prepared an ordinance working with some community activists to do just that. And I'll ask Sophia King to join me in co-sponsoring that ordinance, I'm going to file for the next city council meeting. So yes, it has to stop. We have to do it right now. We have to draw the line to say that white supremacy cannot exist in a modernized, reform-minded Chicago Police Department.
Alderwoman.
Yeah, when you're waffling, you say through a legal process. No, you fire the Proud Boy, you keep the officer that's over the consent decree, you do that immediately to send a message. And that's why the culture is messed up now, because we don't do those things to hold people who are wronging our people accountable immediately. So fire the Proud Boy.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, same thing, fire them in my public safety plan. We talk about how we're going to expedite the implementation of the consent decree that will ultimately work to prevent those type of individuals from infiltrating our public space.
Jamal Green.
First, I want to give a shout out to Rod Sawyer for that, because I usually talk about the politicians in this race who ain't doing their job. So I'm glad to hear that you're going to do it. We must make sure that we fire the Proud Boy and make that a policy in our administration. And we got to hold officers accountable in other ways. We propose fining officers who misuse their equipment, cutting off their body cameras up to $5,000. We want to put measures in place that if we find that there's anything, whether it's a tattoo or a racial post or a Twitter troll account, that we will fire you immediately in our administration and get rid of the Proud Boys in the police department.
The far-right domestic terrorism is the greatest threat to democracy in America today. We saw what they do on January 6th. They coordinated with the Trump administration trying to overturn an election. We cannot have them in the Chicago Police Department. We should fire them. We should take all measures to prevent and screen and to make sure that that threat is certainly not in law enforcement here in Chicago.
Representative Buckner.
Y'all better listen to what people are saying and what they're not saying, more importantly, on the stage when it comes to this. Fire them, fire them, fire them, have a zero tolerance policy, period. But we can't just stop there. There are also groups who helped funded the insurrection, who are funding these domestic terrorist groups, who have contracts with the city. Uline is one of them, right? That has to stop. I filed legislation at the state level to make sure that no one who is connected to the January 6th insurrection, no one who has these Proud Boys, Oath Keeper ties, who are funding them, can ever get a single dollar or dime out the state of Illinois. The city needs to do the same thing.
Thank you. This next question starts with Representative Buckner. Great leaders make sure those who are most vulnerable are cared for and not left behind. This is especially true when we speak of children with special needs. Special education has been a point of contention this year. How will you prioritize and reallocate funds to shore up those serious gaps in special education?
Yeah, my mother spent 33 years as a CPS special education teacher. So this is extremely important and personal to me. We have put our young people in a very disadvantaged position. And so through my education plan, which I presented last summer, I talk a lot about making sure we're putting the right funding into the system based on needs, right? Not enrollment-based, but needs-based formula, so that our young people who are in our special education programs actually have the ability to get the resources that they need. Also, we need to talk about the fact that CPS has broken the law when it comes to what the Illinois State Board of Education tells us we need to do when it comes to young people with IEPs and their transportation to and from school. Listen, we can't continue to put our young people in these positions. We have to change it on day one, and that will happen under a Buckner administration.
Thank you.
As a parent, a grandparent of two children who have special needs, I understand how important it is, and it will be a high priority on my agenda. To be brief, I associate myself with Representative Buckner's remarks on what needs to be done, everything from transportation to ensuring that the education plans provide children what they need. It's very important. This too is equity.
Thank you. Jamal Green.
Well, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do a forensic audit on CPS's books when we get in office, because we have dollars that are coming down the pipeline. When they say $30,000 is supposed to go to each student, is it coming into the classroom? Is it going into their school buildings? It's not. So we need to audit it. The privatizers are the ones who are getting rich. The privatizers in our school buildings who are caring for the food or for how the cleanliness of the buildings. We got to get rid of all of those corrupt contracts of the privatizers and institute good paying union jobs back into our school system to take care of our children. We have to go to the state and change the formula from enrollment-based formula to needs-based formula, because if you keep basing it on enrollment, then they'll just push people to these other schools and then close the schools down. We have to stop that in the city of Chicago. CPS needs the funding that it needs, and we will make that a priority in our administration.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah, well, as a public school teacher, as someone who relies upon the public education system with all three of my children, you're finally going to have a mayor who actually believes in public education. Look, many of you in this room worked alongside of folks who are part of this stage as well to bring democracy into our public schools. And that's a big deal, having an elected representative school board that actually speaks to the interests of people. And we're going to speed up that process. Look, you won't have to sue my administration to implement support for special education students. We have to fund, we have to believe, and we have to continue to organize. The problem that we've had for too long in the city of Chicago is that the budgetary schemes that have left families behind have put us in this predicament. As the mayor of the city of Chicago, you'll have someone who doesn't just love the ideal of public education, but loves our people enough to invest in them. That's what I've done, that's what I've been doing, and that's what I'm going to continue to do once we occupy the 5th floor together.
Thank you. Alderwoman King?
Yeah, as a teacher, educator, and mom, I know that there's no greater predictor of somebody's future than their education. And equitable distribution is always important. I helped start Ariel Community Academy, served on its first LSC. But I also have a school, Kenwood, which is probably the best, it is the best neighborhood school in the entire city, predominantly African American. It's where Brandon sends his son. It has test scores like a selective enrollment school, Jones, also in my ward, on the north side. We have to continue to bring resources to schools like that to continue to build our communities around good schools, safety and good schools. If we don't have those, people are going to continue to be run out of Chicago or not come back. I will continue to put resources in neighborhood schools so that we can grow and have vibrant communities around those.
Thank you. Alderman Sawyer?
Yes. I'm also proud to have a mother who served as a Chicago public school teacher in the special education area. We have to do much more for our diverse learners. We make sure that we have really that need-based formula we all support. I think most of us, and not all of us, support. But when we talk about diverse learners, we have to take special attention in that because, for example, I have a school, Neal School on 85th in Michigan, who has a population of about half diverse learners, half students there. Having the people see the connections, making sure that we provide proper services. Sometimes it's vocational services, sometimes it's just mobility services, making sure they can get from A to B and understand how to traverse the city. We have to provide all these resources to our diverse learners to make sure that they come out of school being productive members of society, that they won't be dependent on their parents or other organizations. They can work, they can be helpful, but we have to provide that direct assistance, and we'll do that under the Sawyer administration.
Thank you. Paul Vallis?
Look, we're spending $30,000 per child. Ask the classroom teacher if they think that they're getting $30,000 per child. 11% decline in enrollment, the last since 2019, 40% increase per pupil funding. Is it finding its way into special ed? Is it finding its way into local schools? We need to push the funding down to the local school level so the schools can make the decisions on the additional resources they need. Secondly, we need to extend the school day and the school year. Now, that doesn't mean forcing teachers to work that extra time, but if you have more instructional time, you can provide more specialized education services. That's a proven fact. The third thing we need to do is we've got to stop misclassifying Black American boys as special needs. 8% of the population, public school population, are Black boys. 80%, 22% of the population are classified as special ed. 80% of that population do not have any developmental, any cognitive disabilities, so they get misclassified because we're simply not providing them with the appropriate academic interventions and support. So we got to get serious about who we classify children to.
Thank you.
Let's give it up for the candidates. Come on, everybody. This is the section of our program where we have our sponsors and the voices of the people ask direct questions of the candidates. And so we will be starting with you, State Representative, and we'll come straight down the line. But this question is being directed to all of you by Miracle Boyd.
Thank you.
From
Good Kids, Mad City.
James Robertson from Good Kids, Mad City.
Wonderful. Very quickly.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, the Peace Book will be an app that gives resources to youth with information about wraparound services like employment, housing, education, and violence prevention. It also is a tool that will pay youth in our communities, in our schools, and the juvenile detention centers to become peacekeepers and resolve conflict in a nonviolent way, to make youth culture, peace, a way of life, to use restorative justice to repair harm and prevent future retaliation. So to the candidates.
To the candidates, will you support the Peace Book in your first 100 days?
Mr. Vallis?
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Sawyer?
Yes, I'm the lead sponsor of it right now.
All right.
Alderwoman King.
Yes, I've been working with Good Kids, Mad City since the very beginning. I'm glad to see you guys are thriving and getting into the political process. Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, and thank you all for your organizing. You make me proud as a teacher and as an organizer. Thank you for your work.
Jamal Green.
100% yes.
I support funding the Peace Book, and I come from restorative justice practices in my prior life, and I also sponsored the Connecting Youth to Jobs Act, a $10 billion initiative at the federal level. Understand the need that young people have and the need for you to have a voice in the Peace Book as well. Look forward to empowering that and making it a reality.
Representative Buckner.
Miracle and James, thank you for all y'all do. Absolutely, but I'm competitive, not the first 100 days, first 50 days. And I filed the counterpart to the Peace Book in Springfield, which is the Peace Act, which I will pass before I become mayor.
Thank you. The next question is coming from a member of Project Hood, Andre Smith, and you can answer these questions fully with the full answer.
Actually, Chicago Against Violence. Okay, that's what we were given. So, but thank you. Please, your question.
My name is Andre Smith, and I just spent 24 hours in a tent across the street from Wadsworth, representing our homeless in the unfair process of the illegals at Wadsworth. If you become mayor, will you ensure the Chicagoans that you will make sure that our homeless population get the same access, if not better, than the illegals that got $75 million at Wadsworth?
Thank you. We'll start with Representative Buckner.
What's going on, Andre? Listen, I think being a welcoming city means that we're welcoming to the folks who are here and that we're welcoming to people who want to come here. So I think that we have to have resources, and we shouldn't create resource fights, but that means the city has to do what it's supposed to do for the people who are here, for sure.
Thank you.
Andre, I hear your frustration. First of all, I believe that most of those folks who are there are asylees. They entered the country with permission till their asylum cases are heard. 1. 2, we have to overcome all of the years of disinvestment and structural racism in Chicago to make life good for all the people across Chicago. Lastly, I stood with Harold Washington when he declared Chicago the first sanctuary city in America. And let us not forget that Chicago was founded by a black immigrant from Haiti who was married to an indigenous woman. That is our legacy as proud Chicagoans. We can do both. We can take care of people who have been discriminated, and we can welcome people who are fleeing violence and other terrible things as well.
Thank you. Jamal Green.
Well, let me say, I think it's utterly disgusting that 10 years ago, 50 schools were shut down. Schools have been land vacant in these neighborhoods for years. Community members have come together to say, we want affordable housing, or we want a community center, or we want something in our neighborhood that can bring resources back to our communities. And to no avail all of these years, And then now, without engagement from the community, they seek to put folks, migrants in there without community engagement. I think it's utterly disgusting. These neighborhoods deserve better, and the people in these neighborhoods deserve better. We have to welcome the people in these neighborhoods and our young people and make sure that they have investment in safe spaces. We got 20,000 homeless youth out of that 65,000, and we got to do better as a city of Chicago to invest in these neighborhoods and invest in people, and we will do that under our administration.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah, so, you know, my older brother Leon, who is, you know, still my hero, you know, he passed away. He had untreated trauma, Andre, and I've shared this story with you before, and he died addicted and unhoused. You know, the type of economic structure that exists in this country has left many of our families behind, particularly black families. We can do both. You know, I think about the route. My family was a part of the second migration, 57 North. Delia Ramirez, whose mother came up to deliver Delia Ramirez at Cook County Hospital, the same Cook County Hospital that provided me support at the Fantas Clinic. I think to your point, the fact that our communities constantly get pit against one another, that is by design, and it's the definition of white supremacy, because the Republican right-wing governors are using families as a political football. Under my administration, we have to do both. I've done it as a teacher, I've done it as an organizer, I've done it as a Cook County commissioner. We can take care of the people who have been here and still be a welcoming city for other families who are seeking refuge. We can do it.
Thank you. Alderwoman King?
Sure, it's not about, you know, whether we're welcoming or not. We have to be welcoming. It's about the process. And it's about the tension between people who have been here, lived here, and haven't felt that welcoming city, and so we have to do that. We welcomed homeless into our community, into the 4th Ward. We were one of the first during the COVID to do that. We're also one of the first to welcome migrants. But with all due respect, Congressman, welcoming also means welcoming those Haitian immigrants into the country as well that we blocked from coming. And so it's all about equity, parity, true equity and parity, and not just invoking people's names when you're trying to pander to black votes. So I would continue to do that.
Thank you. Alderman Sawyer?
Yes, Brother Andre, I share your pain. I understand the ostracizing that's happening right now in this community. We obviously want to make sure that we welcome those that are experiencing some distress. We want to make sure that, but we're experiencing distress here right in our own neighborhoods. And we don't think that people don't feel that they're getting that same kind of love that the other individuals are getting. So I understand that. You will get that love from me. We want to make sure that we provide that assistance to everyone, whether they're born here, live here, or had through circumstances get here. We want to make sure that we're a true welcoming city, and a true welcoming city welcomes those that are already here as well as those that are coming. So I share it, brother.
Thank you. Paul Vallis?
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, I'm not going to second guess Alderman, or I should say Representative Garcia's commitment to being a welcoming city. I mean, at the end of the day, when we were in the Chicago Public Schools, we were a welcoming school district, and I know he was part of that effort to welcome people in. And we had the Bosnian war migration of individuals, and people were brought into the system through, there's a process of doing that. But let's remember that we have 77 communities that can be welcoming. And Andre, make sure that when they give up that building, they're only supposed to be there 2 years, right? Make sure when that building totally remodeled, when they're out in 2 years, that the community gets to do what they want to do with that building. You finally got a building renovated, right? That vacant school was renovated. Take advantage of that. But let me tell you, we need to be a welcoming city for returning citizens. And we are not. And we are not. Individuals that are being released from incarceration, and they don't have housing, they don't have adult ed, occupational training, job opportunities, they don't have opportunities to work or to get city jobs. So at the end of the day, we've got to be welcoming to our returning citizens too.
Thank you.
We have G2 Brown from Cocoa.
Thank you. All right. Good morning to all the candidates. Morning. Much love and respect to you, Reverend Jackson. My name is G2 Brown, board president of the Kenwood Oakland Community Organization. Just in case y'all forgot. All right. Speaking of pushing black people out of the city of Chicago, Since 1997, the state of Illinois has had a ban on rent control. Do you support lifting the ban on rent control in the state of Illinois? Once the ban is lifted, what would you do to support rent control in the city of Chicago?
Paul Vallis, we'll start with you.
I support property tax caps. The way to control rent is through property tax caps, not rent control. You impose rent control, and you're going to basically have landlords are not going to be able to renovate their buildings, improve their buildings. So at the end of the day, I believe that property tax caps. The reason that the rents are rising, the property taxes are rising because of gentrification in various communities in the city. It's because there are no individual property tax caps. So if you want to control rent, and if you want to stop forcing people into housing foreclosures, or in tax court because they can't pay their property taxes, the most effective way to do it is to enact residential and business property tax caps so nobody is taxed out of their home and nobody is taxed out of their apartments.
Thank you. Alderman Sawyer.
No, I actually have a serious problem with long-term effects of rent control, but I would love to talk about it and see what your vision is for rent control. No, the right answer is the true answer, and this is how I feel, and that's an honest answer. G2, you know I would talk to you at any time, any place, to hear what your vision is, but I've looked at long-term effects of rent control, and I have a problem with it. No.
1 second, audience. 1 second. Alderwoman King, your turn to answer that question.
Thank you. So I have an issue with it too, long term, but also because it will disproportionately impact our community the most. You have a right to control your property that you own. 6 flats, 10 flats, 2 flats, those are properties that we own predominantly, and if you're an owner of that and that's your income, you have a right to control that. And so we have to not address policy with hammers. We have to address it with precision so that it doesn't come back and hit us in the head.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, I do support lifting the ban. Rent control, look, it's becoming increasingly more unaffordable to live in the city of Chicago. There are ways in which we can make sure that we are providing the incentives that are needed in order to actually create the type of economic stability that we need in our communities, you all. We are being forced out of our communities all over the city of Chicago, and that's why I support not just expanding affordable housing, but also building more public housing. Also a pathway to home ownership. Again, down payment assistance that my wife and I experienced. That's how we became homeowners. We can actually provide regulations in place, develop revenue streams to increase availability of housing, and we can do all that without raising property taxes, which will also provide protection for black families who are holding on those 3 flats, 6 flats.
Just a reminder for your answers, 45 seconds, and Jamal Green, you're next.
Well, when you talk about lifting the ban on rent control, then you can have a conversation after the ban is lifted on how it's constructed, right? And so, yes, I support lifting the ban. And then when you talk about, all the things we talked about today, it's going to be making sure that folks aren't consistently pushed out of their neighborhoods, that folks do have a pathway to home ownership, which is why our public bank is put in place, as well as using our bonding capacity to bring folks back to the neighborhood. So yes, I support it. And then after we have the conversation on how do we implement it in the city of Chicago.
Thank you. Congressman Garcia.
G2, you and I agree on a lot of things. On this one, I am still debating the policy debate on it to get fully immersed. I welcome your input into that debate. However, one of the things that has happened in Chicago is our over-reliance on property taxes to fund our schools and other essential services. It's what's displacing so many people. I responded this week with a property tax relief plan that is modest, but that should call the attention to the mayor and the city council to act today to keep people from losing properties because they can't pay their property tax bills, even in areas where taxes didn't go up. But there are huge delinquencies that threaten black homeowners today. Secondly, it provides other tax relief in gentrifying areas in Chicago. I look forward to our continued conversation, G2, and I, of course, always open for you to convince me.
Thank you. Representative Buckner.
fundamentally and functionally, I have an issue with Chicago being a home rule authority and Springfield not allowing us to do the things that our people want, right? So as far as lifting the ban in Springfield, I've been open to doing that so we can figure out in the city how we create some rent stability or whatever it is that we have to do for our people. But that alone is not going to solve the problem. We got to make sure that we have enough affordable housing stock. We're putting our money where our mouth is when it comes to making sure people are housed. Once again, this is the third largest GDP in the country. If Chicago was its own separate country, it would be the 22nd richest country in the world, right? So we have the resources. I want to make sure we have the leadership to put all of this stuff in place. Absolutely.
Thank you. So we have two final questions.
Whoa, one moment. Everyone, we understand that everyone here is very emotional about our city and about these issues. But at the top, we said that we're going to be respectful. As we ask for respect on a personal level, we require it also on an institutional level. Even with people with whom you disagree, we can disagree without being disagreeable. So let us do that, please. LaTanya Mitchell of SEIU.
Hi, I'm LaTanya Mitchell. I'm a child care provider in the city of Chicago here on the South Side. As we all know, the pandemic brought about increased attention to the child care crisis in Chicago. Child care is unaffordable and inaccessible for parents and unsustainable for workers, struggling to make it on really low pay. My question to the entire panel is, how would you address the child care crisis here in Chicago?
Starting with Representative Buckner.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I've said often that the pandemic didn't break us, but the pandemic showed us what was already broken about us. Broken our systems and our priorities and the way we did our business. And so that has really come to the forefront when it comes to child care in Chicago. My wife and I have a 14-month-old kid, so we're going through this process as we speak. And I'll, for one, say I didn't know how complicated it is and how hard it is for folks who don't have the resources. Listen, there are a few things that have to happen. I think, one, we've got to be smarter through city government to make sure that we can help child care providers through zoning, especially those who do it in their home, that we're able to provide grants and resources from the state and federal government to you through an actual apparatus at city government. But the biggest thing is that the city has to stop acting like a competitor to folks who offer child care. We have to be a collaborator and find a way to bring all of these resources together.
Thank you. Congressman Garcia.
As someone who's represented some of the youngest populations in the U.S. Congress with a lot of kids, I get the issue. Child care workers are among the most underpaid in our economy, yet we entrust them to take care of our loved ones, of our children. We need to change this. Last year, decisions that were made by the city resulted in the loss of 4,000 slots, mostly community providers, as they sought to move the program into schools. That needs to be changed. I supported in Congress the permanent extension of the child tax credit because it gives credits and income to people to be able to provide for essential things like child care. Having said that, we need to continue to provide more funding at the federal level, continue to work with the state. We need to invest in ensuring that those who care for our children don't make poverty wages and can't even afford child care for their own children at home.
Thank you. Jamal Green.
Well, whenever black women are the helm of the economy of child care, you know what they would do. And they will make sure that they are not funding and moving forth resources for child care. Look, I don't know what I would do if I didn't have child care for my 3-year-old, because if he was here, he'd be all running around all around here. We got to make sure that we have fair wages for child care, and we got to really work with our state officials for better pay, because when you look at, if we're paying teachers $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, our child care providers should get the same amount of pay as well. They're taking care of our children. Our early childhood is so important. So, I'm proud of you for all of your work, and we need to also give forth grants for capital, and we also need to make available more buildings if they need spaces. We need to provide a pathway to ownership. So there's a lot of work that we must do, and we're ready to do it under our administration.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, thank you for that, and thank you for your work. Of course, I had the chance to visit the work that you're doing not too far from Simeon. Thank you for that. Look, I started off as a child care worker. It's one of the first jobs that I've ever had, $6.25 an hour. And It's why I put this in my education plan. Child care for all. Let's just keep it simple. Child care for all. You know, when my wife and I were preparing for child care services, we were paying more for child care than our mortgage. It's $1,500 a month. What is it, almost $20,000 a month for infant child care? In my plan for the city of Chicago, child care for all, fully funded and supported under my administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderwoman King?
Yeah, as a teacher and educator, I know that five-year-old, up to five-year-old is the greatest prediction of how you're going to be in the future. And we also know that five-year-olds are 75% unprepared to enter school. And an unprepared five-year-old becomes an unprepared fourth grader, becomes an unprepared high schooler. So I would put more money into early childhood education so that we don't have to compete the private industries that you represent, the public ones that the city represents. We shouldn't have to compete for our largest and best commodity is our kids. That's one thing. The other thing is I would incentivize teachers, early childhood teachers with 0% interest mortgages to buy vacant lots in our city so that they can afford to live here, would also increase their salary like I've done with the Fight for $15 minimum wage. We knew that wasn't enough. We've got to increase that more. So I would incentivize teachers. I would also make sure that it's a priority for early childhood education in my administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Sawyer?
Yes. First, you increase the funding that child care providers get, work with the state. I've introduced that resolution both in 2016 and 2019 to support workers to getting that increased funding. Next, we have to make sure that CPS is not cherry picking and taking all your children out of your programs, because that's exactly what they're doing when Mayor Emanuel instituted his program in 2018, basically set up a competitor to your business. The problem I have with that is most of the successful black women-owned businesses in a great deal are child care providers. You all are the backbone of our economy. You do great work, and you take care of our children. My aunt and uncle owned a child care provider space, Itsy Bitsy People Palace, and I had to pay a lot as well when my children were little. So I get it. I've been working with you all for years and years, and I'll continue to work with you as under the Sawyer administration.
Thank you. Paul Vallis?
The solution to child care in this city is through community-based child care providers, period. And we all know what Rahm Emanuel did. I think 22 child community centers actually closed because he did not provide the funding that had been promised. Also, we need to allow community providers to be able to access public buildings. We got 646 school buildings, and at least by data, almost half of them are at fewer than 50% capacity. It's not like we don't have enough space. The third thing is we need to provide capital assistance to those child care providers who want to upgrade their buildings, who want to get rid of their lead pipes. And finally, we need to grant, whether they're for-profit or not-for-profit, we need to grant community child care providers, we need to grant them tax-exempt status because they can pay their workers more if they're not paying property taxes and all the other taxes, fees, and fines that they're ultimately subjected to.
Thank you. We have one final question, but we get to it. I understand that Congressman Garcia has another engagement, so we want to give you the opportunity for... everybody does. Okay. How do we want to do that? Everybody has a prior engagement.
Everyone has a prior engagement.
Or another engagement, I should say.
Okay. Would you mind if we turn this into a lightning rod response?
Yes.
Yes, no? Your question? Okay.
Okay, this next question is coming from Margaret Hayward Smith from Soul to Polls.
Good morning. I would like to know, how are you going to address the crime and the violence that is impacting my family and everyone else's family, and how would you do it without raising property taxes?
We were going to do yes or no, but maybe you can sum that up in 15 seconds. Is that possible?
Sure, I can start.
Yes, I would like for you to sum it up in 15 seconds.
Okay, we're
I
going
don't
to do
know if I've
exactly
ever
what she
summed
said.
anything up in 15 seconds. In a nutshell, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill the police vacancies, and I'm going to push police officers down to the local police beats. So when you call 911, there is a car there, and you're not waiting 2 hours for that car to respond. So that is one of many things that I will do to, and those police officers will be police officers you know and who know you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very quickly. One is to continue what I've already been working on, and I studied it earlier, the community commissions for public safety, making sure that they are effective and working come after February 28th, making sure they're making their true connections between the community and police, and making sure we can get those numbers down without spending any additional money. It's already placed in the budget.
Thank you.
Alderman King?
Four quick things. Disengaged youth, making sure we engage them. There's no reason K through 12 we don't have strong engagement programs, both in the school, outside of the school. Violence intervention programs, putting hundreds of millions of dollars into those. More police in all of our communities, because they are not in our communities when you call 911. It's like the song goes. So in the communities where they belong, in good times, and alternative responses to police. Over 50% of calls are to 911 are for nonviolent issues like homeless insecurities, mental health insecurities. We need people who are trained to do that, to respond.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This is a serious problem that we're facing all over the city of Chicago. No, I'm not going to raise property taxes. We're going to invest in young people. I have the largest investment of youth employment that we have seen in a generation. There's a direct correlation between that and violence reduction. We're going to pass treatment, not trauma. We're going to reopen the mental health centers. We're going to make them publicly funded. And we're going to make sure that we're implementing the consent decree. We're going to spend to actually invest in people to make our people safe. The safest cities in America all have one thing in common. They invest in people.
Jamal Green.
Well, we put out an EPIC plan. It stands for Economic Prosperity, Prevention, Intervention, and CPD Reform. Economic prosperity talks about how we're going to invest in neighborhoods to increase the home ownership. We're also going to be investing in young people with apprenticeships 13 and up. We're going to open up school buildings throughout the day and on weekends with trade and tech hubs and connection to manufacturing jobs. We're also going to create a youth intervention department to put young people on the right path and invest in a block club infrastructure program so that we can start to organize blocks around the city, as well as $100 million for a pure responder unit of social workers to respond to the 40% of the calls. So we're also going to, last thing, I know you cut me, we have to invest into returning citizens and make sure that they have a pathway to middle-class jobs in the city of Chicago.
Thank you.
On the public safety issue, please look at my public safety plan. One, invest in youth, invest in youth. Jobs for youth, really, really critical. Invest in proven violence prevention programs. Chicago's a leader nationally. They need to be invested in significantly. I will work with the private sector to also invest. This is critical to prevention and intervention of violence in our communities. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. The answer is balancing safety and justice. Number one, CPD needs new leadership. We can't continue on the route that we're going. Number two, we need to make sure that we're putting money in real violence prevention on the folks who, like Project Hood, who are doing the work on the ground every day to stop this violence, right? Number three, we have to make sure that we hire more detectives, not just more beat cops. There is some worth on beat integrity, but detectives. We got a 50% clearance rate. People are murdering folks in the city and walking free without ever being having to call up for justice. As a person who has gone through that with my family, it's too much. So we got to make sure we do that. Pass treatment, not trauma. Pass the Peace Book Ordinance. Pass the Anjanette Young Ordinance, and actually do the work so Chicago can be a city that cares about its people.
Thank you very much. You know, we understand that all of you have another event that you've got to attend. We want to thank you for being with us. Please give them a round of applause, everyone. And at this moment, we were going to go into your 1-minute closing remarks, but we understand that that will eat your time. We don't want to do that. We invite you to come to the Rainbow Push Forum every Saturday in the coming Saturday so that you can do so. But in the meantime, there's just a little bit of housekeeping that we need to do to you. Project Hood, our wonderful host here, have not endorsed any candidates, and they are not endorsing any candidates, and we wanted to make that clear, okay? Because they wanted to have a forum where everybody could attend. Please, everybody, give them a round of applause as they go. And we were not cutting anyone. We were just trying to give you the grace and the space to leave. So we just thank you very much, Bishop.
Yes. Let's give all the candidates a round of applause, everybody. Let's give our moderators a round of applause. Santita Jackson and Tia Ewing. Just want you to hold on just for a moment. We're going to hold on just for a moment. Can I get the lights up in the house? Just for a moment. Give yourselves a round of applause, everybody. Want to hear in closing remarks from Reverend Jesse Jackson. Can we just have closing remarks from Reverend Jackson? There's a QR code and information for how you can support the Rainbow Push Coalition and the work of Reverend Jesse Jackson. Again, thank you, Project Hood and New Beginnings Church, Pastor Corey Brooks. Let's give it up for Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Brothers and sisters, let us pray. Let's stop for a moment what we're doing. We thank God for allowing us to have a civilized conversation today. One of those in particular who chose to come today, others chose not to. We live with what we got. I'm very impressed with your stuff, Green. The youngest man on the stage, making a lot of sense. Give Green a big hand. An endorsement is just appreciation of his homework. See, a young man in his early 20s make this kind of sense, a big deal, right? See, when young people make real sense, you should honor them at every level. Thank you, buddy. I want to thank all of you for your various contributions. I look forward to all of you joining the Rainbow Push Coalition. We need to have these kind of discussions every Saturday morning. Say every Saturday morning. All y'all to commit when the campaign's over, only y'all gonna win. Say one will win, 8 will lose. Don't lose the campaign, don't lose your commitment to the proposition. Some of you who are best prepared started late, nobody know you. It's important that we serve in a public way, gain public confidence. I thank you so much. Let's bow our heads and pray. Join hands. Join hands. Father God, we thank you so much for loving us all night long. Waking us up today. You didn't have to do it, but you did it. Lord, build a fence of protection around these candidates as they risk their lives every day, taking their case to the public square. Let's vote with renewed fervor on the 28th of this month. It's not a missed opportunity. We've come here from London, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina. We escaped here for the right to vote. We heard it makes sense. We have the capacity, if we have the will to do so. One thing we know for certain, nothing is too hard for you, dear God. Nothing is too, you can make crooked ways straight. You can make enemies behave. Amen. Now, I want y'all to do this, candidates. Wait. I want you to